Okay, welcome followers and friends, subscribers and visitors. This afternoon we're going to be doing another short video in Christian apologetics, and we're going to be talking about, can I believe in miracles? Now this video is actually a follow-on from the video I posted a couple of weeks ago called Does God Really Exist? And at the tail end of that video we left it with, yes, God exists, but kind of hanging up there in the air is, well, what kind of a God is he? Is he a kind of God that creates the universe and then up and walks away without anything more to do with us? Or is he a God that continues to operate within our lives, within our existences in that universe? That would be a theistic type God. So we left that. Now, in order to help understand that, we need to understand what about miracles. Most Christians believe, I think most all Christians will believe, in a theistic God, which means God that is continually sustaining the universe that he created. And in order to understand that and to accept that, we have to look at miracles. So let's take a look at miracles. What are miracles? Well, miracles are a marvelous event manifesting a supernatural act of a divine agent. That's the definition. So why miracles? What's important about miracles? Let me go back to the days of old when a king wanted to talk to another king. He had to send a message via his messenger to another king. The question is, how could that receiving king know for absolute certain that the message came from the king that sent it? Well, they would use a thing called a signet ring. And a signet ring was unique to that king, hard to make, very hard to forge the symbol. For example, they'd write down their message on a piece of paper, fold it up, and put some candle wax on the paper to prevent it from coming open. And while the wax was still soft, they would press their signet ring into that wax, and that would indicate to the recipient who received it and saw the signet to say, okay, I know that signet comes from that king, and I can trust it. Well, miracles are the unique signet ring to God and hard to replicate. So if we take some event, some miraculous event, some supernatural event that only God could create, and hard for anybody who can't replicate it, he's the only one that can replicate it, the only one that can do it, it becomes the unique signet ring to God. This God's signet ring says, hey, this guy speaks for me, listen up. So he would perform some sort of miracle while his messenger is giving the message, and God would say through the miracle, this guy speaks for me, listen up. Now, so miracles confirm the messenger, validates the messenger. What about signs? Signs are kind of like miracles a little bit, but there's a possibility if you research all the different situations you could run into, there's a possibility that maybe this sort of thing could happen. For example, a person who is lame and bedridden could all of a sudden just get up and walk. Well, it doesn't happen often, but it could happen, all right? What makes it kind of miraculous, though, is happening by request immediately when spoken. When someone says, do this or do that, and that automatically happens, then that kind of makes it almost miraculous. Yeah, once in a while it could possibly happen, but as a miraculous sign, it confirms the message. So miracles that only God can create confirm the messenger, and then the signs usually perform that message by the messenger confirms the message. Okay? So when do miracles occur? When do they happen? Well, between Moses and Jesus, it's about 1,500 years, and there was about 250 miracles. Now, these miracles were not spread out evenly across all time, like one miracle every 6 years, but rather they appeared to come in clusters, 3 clusters. The first cluster is around the time of Moses. So we see Moses performing miracles God is then saying by those miracles that Moses speaks for me, listen up. There's another cluster around Elijah and Elisha, a series of miracles. Once again, God is validating as his messenger Elijah and Elijah. And then thirdly, around Jesus and the apostles. We've got a number of miracles performed by Jesus and some signs by the apostles. That's basically God saying, hey, these folks speak for me, listen up. So new messengers with new messages need confirmation, and God's ring provides that confirmation. All right. Some people say miracles are impossible. For example, some people will tell you when you talk about the resurrection of Jesus, they're going to say, no, I can't believe in that. Everyone I know that died is still dead. Can you imagine the problems we would have if resurrections were possible? I mean, suppose my Uncle Jimmy died last week and he had an estate worth $1 million and he split all the money up amongst his relatives. And then this week, he's resurrected and come back. And he wants his money back. And we ain't got it. We spent it. No, I don't believe in resurrection. Another thing may be Jonah. Some people may have a problem with Jonah. Is that a tail of a whale or a whale of a tail? So understandably, some people may have some difficulties with accepting miracles. Well, let me ask you this. What do you think is the greatest miracle? Now, I'm teaching a class, and I ask that question. Quite often, I'll get things like walking on water, maybe turning water into wine, splitting the sea. Things like that are the greatest miracles. Christians quite often come up with the resurrection as the greatest miracle. I'm not sure that that's the greatest miracle. What do you think is the greatest miracle? Let me show you what I think the greatest miracle is. Any ideas? So what are we seeing here? I think we're seeing the greatest miracle. We're seeing Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. That was supposed to be a simulation of the Big Bang. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. We talked about this in the last video. Does God really exist? So what are the three things that God created? Genesis 1:1. Well, he created the heavens. He created the earth. And the third thing is he created time. He created the beginning. So we have the beginning, the heavens, and the earth. All three things being created in that Big Bang. And now some of you say, whoa, a Christian person talking about the Big Bang? Yeah, I call it a Big Bang because I know who banged it, okay? So the Big Bang is probably the greatest miracle. Think about it. If God can create the universe from absolutely nothing, I mean, like not just some background waves and force fields or quantum fields. I'm talking nothing. Absolutely nothing is what rocks dream about. All right? Seriously, nothing. If God can create the universe from nothing, then what's impossible? What is impossible? Well, there is something impossible for God, and that's called a logical impossibility. For example, remember, God is, by definition, one of the characteristics of God is logic and reason, okay? So God, because he is logical, cannot create something that is not logical, illogical. For example, he can't create a one-ended stick. He can't create a square circle, all right? He can't create a rock that's too big for him to lift. So that would be illogical or not logically possible. But everything else, if it possibly could happen, God creates or can create, and he can create it from nothing. All right, back to Gen 1:1. If every other Bible miracle is possible, if in fact Genesis 1:1 says God created the universe. If you accept the fact that you, sitting here listening to this, while spinning around the earth, while circling around the sun, a star in the galaxy, a star is one of literally 200 billion stars in our galaxy, and there are literally trillions, hundreds of trillions perhaps, of galaxies in the universe. If all of that can be created from absolutely nothing, can you think of any miracle in the Bible that can't be happening? If God can create us, if God could create the seas, the land, the miracles are like easy for him. Easy, including resurrection, raising someone from the dead. So at the very least, every miracle in the Bible is very possible. So why do we doubt it? Why do we doubt it? Let me start by asking, are we seeking truth or pleasure? Many times what we believe, what we think about, what we don't believe is based upon what it is we're trying to do. Are we seeking truth or are we seeking pleasure? Well, what is true? All right. I think we know what pleasure is. When we're seeking something which makes us happy, enjoyable, pleasurable, we say we're seeking pleasure. But what is true? Well, true is basically proved through a series of logical steps. And one of them says that extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. Well, is that true or false? That claim is quite often made. Is it true or false? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And that was started by a fellow by the name of Baruch Spinoza and David Hume. And the educational system that we're under today still teaches much of the principles of Spinoza and Hume. I'm going to give you an example. Spinoza, 1632 to 1677. And he was one of the Enlightenment philosophers. And basically what he said was, miracles are violations of natural laws. Natural laws are immutable. It is impossible to violate immutable laws. Therefore, miracles are impossible. Let me just side tell there. Immutable means unchanging, cannot be changed. So if something is immutable, it is unchanging. What kind of a natural law would be immutable? Let's say, for example, the law of gravity. It doesn't matter how many times I drop a tennis ball, it's going to fall to the floor. If I drop it thousands of times, the next time I drop it, it's going to fall to the floor. There's no way that gravity's going to say, you have dropped that enough, I'm not going to pull it down anymore. The next time you drop it, it's going up. And I can't speak to a room full of folks and talk about the immutability of gravity and have someone in the classroom say, well, I don't believe in gravity. What's going to happen? Are they going to suddenly drift up out of their chair, ascend to the ceiling? Believe, come back, believe, come back. No. The laws of gravity are immutable. So Spinoza then says miracles violate natural laws. Natural laws are immutable. It's impossible to violate immutable laws. Therefore, miracles are impossible. Well, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that reasoning? Well, number 3, natural laws are descriptive, not predictive. Okay? We overpower gravity every day. We hold onto the ball, we don't let it drop. Gravity pulls us toward the earth, but we're not collapsing into it. So natural laws are, for us, descriptive and not prescriptive. They don't describe what actually has to happen under all circumstances, but they are descriptive in how it acts under natural circumstances. If we can overpower them locally, then can God overpower them globally? Of course. If God has the power to create an immutable law and it's descriptive, then he can in fact overpower that to where we perceive that as a change of a immutable law. So why do we doubt that? Why do we doubt that? fault. The education system I referred to still teaches Baruch Spinoza and David Hume, and we're going to continue that topic. Let's look at David Hume, 1711 to 1776, and he was a philosophical empiricist. Well, what does that mean? Philosophical means he's a philosopher, studies the philosophy of life and existence. An empiricist is a person who believes in empirical data, that is, data that can actually be tested and proven, not just a thought experiment, but in empirical data. A philosophical empiricist then is someone who is basing his philosophy on facts that can be reproduced, checked, observed. All right? So his thing is, natural law is by definition a descriptive of a regular occurrence. A miracle is by definition a rare occurrence. Evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. A wise man always bases his belief on the greater evidence. Therefore, a wise man should never believe in miracles. What's wrong with that reasoning? I mean, it kind of flows nicely. What's wrong with it? Well, premise number 3 is not always true. Premise 3, evidence for the regular is always greater than that for the rare. That's not necessarily true. Let me give you an example. When I'm teaching this in a class, what I'll usually do is ask if someone is having a birthday or just recently had a birthday, and how old were you? Let's say, for example, I ask it and a fellow raises his hands and says, I just had my birthday and I'm 60 years old. And then I'll ask him, well, what do you think was happening about 9 months before 60 years ago? Anything you can think of? And sometimes he'll laugh and giggle, or if not, I'll fill it in. Well, the bottom line is, about 9 months before 60 years ago, chances are your mother and father were engaged in something. What were they engaged in? Well, ultimately, they were engaged in making you. Think about the odds of that. The odds of that one single solitary egg in your mother's womb being fertilized by one sperm, one of 300 or 400 million possible sperms. Millions of sperms, and yet one sperm managed to fertilize that egg. They raced and raced and raced, and one of them made it and fertilized that egg. And that 1 millionth of a sperm, that was you. Happy birthday, you very rare fellow. You are, in fact, millions to one, improbable, and yet you made it. You won the race. Only one made it, and you're here. So is evidence for the regular always greater than that for the rare? Your birthday is very rare. Your birth is very rare. And the evidence, while only one could make it, and the odds against it were very high, it happened. So just because it's rare does not mean that the evidence for that isn't overwhelming. The origin of the universe, one time only. It's here. We can look around, we can see it. The universe is here, one time only. Well, it's rare, but it's here. The origin of life, only once. Life only started once, and it's here. You're looking at me, I'm talking to you. We are alive, we're surrounded by things that are alive, but the origin of life only happened once. Very rare, but it's here. You can't argue that. History is full of unrepeatable events that happened only once. Why not today? Any new prophets or messengers, do they need divine confirmation? Think about it. The last cluster of miracles was back when, the time of Jesus and the apostles, and he delivered to us a message that was completely different, a message that reset the world and everything about us a message that spread over the entire world, one of the most known messages. And God basically said through miracles, hey, this is important, this you need to understand, it comes from me. Can you think of any prophets or messengers that absolutely need divine confirmation today? After Jesus, I don't think so. I certainly can't think of any. Maybe you can, but I can't. So, it's an unusual event. Let's talk about unusual events. There are all kinds of unusual events. There's miracles, but let's look at this matrix of events. Things that some people may think are miracles, but they really aren't. Across the top of the page, I have the types of events: anomalies, magic, psychosomatic, satanic, providence, and miracles. And then down the left, how they are described, what the power is, what the traits are, an example. So, an anomaly. Anomalies are freaks of nature, things that just don't seem to jive with nature. The power, they're physical. They're things we can touch and see, and they're empirical. Remember that new word, empiricism. It's empirical, it's physical, we can see it. The traits, it seems to be a natural event. It seems to be exactly what it seems to be. Example, a bumblebee. A bumblebee, by engineering definition, shouldn't be able to fly. The surface area of the wings, related to the size and mass of the body, shouldn't allow that thing to fly. And yet, bumblebees fly fine. In fact, it wasn't until they began to research this and realized that as a bumblebee flexed its wings, at the end of each wing, it was forming what was known as tip vortices. These are like little circular motions of air, like tornadoes. And these tip vortices would actually exert more of a force on the wing than a normal wing beat. And that's what kept the bumblebee in the air. So it's a freak of nature. It's something that looks like couldn't be happening, but it does. And we study a little bit, we could find out how it could happen. Probably did happen. What about magic? Magic is sleight of hand. It's a mental power. They're trying to convince you something that is or looks like, but probably isn't. The traits is that it's controlled by man, a magician, and that's the example of the rabbit in the hat. When you see the magician pull a rabbit out of the hat, guess what? The rabbit was in the hat. When he showed you the bottom of the hat, he didn't show you the bottom of the hat. There was a rabbit in the hat, and he just pulled it out. So that's magic. What about psychosomatic? Psychosomatic means psycho, that's thought and brain. Somatic means cell and tissue, your body. So something which is psychosomatic is mind over matter. Mind over matter. And that's what the description is. The power is mental. I mean, literally, your brain is convincing you that something material is happening or something material is happening to you. The traits is that it requires faith. You have to believe that your mind has the power to do that. You have to believe that this could be a natural result in your mind. An example would be a psychosomatic cure. Things like when you test a medicine, and half of the medicines are given to people who are placebos, half of them are the real medicine, and lo and behold, some people taking the placebos actually show signs of the cure. Why? Well, it's psychosomatic. Because they were thinking they could be cured, they actually were being cured themselves. What about satanic signs? Bear with me a second while I get a drink here. Excuse me. My throat's getting dry. Satanic signs. Well, satanic signs description, it's evil power. Evil power. And the power is psychic. This is where people actually have belief in psychic systems, psychic powers. They believe that a witch doctor, if he performs certain acts, or a witch performs certain sayings, he or she can have powers over you. The trait is it's an occult, like witchcraft. And the example would be demonic influence. All right, what about providence? Providence are prearranged events that are operating kind of like maybe they're divinely influenced. Maybe there's something about God influencing a prearranged event. The traits are, it's natural, but it seems to have a spiritual context. Well, give me an example of that one. All right. How about the weather at Normandy? This is one that's used as an example often. During the D-Day invasion, World War II, the D-Day invasion, there was all kinds of preparations being made and men being arranged and boats being brought in, equipment being stocked, and they had to secretly overnight come into the water and get up to the Normandy beaches. And as the sun rised, they had to unload their stuff and attack on the beach. Well, there was a problem hitting the day that they originally planned today, and the reason was that the weather was predicted to be lousy, so bad so that it would have had a negative effect on the attack. But there was no other time that they could do it. So they went ahead and assumed that they would be able to pull it off. They did all the prep, they did all the loading, and they did all the execution. They headed for the beaches at Normandy, and lo and behold, moments before landing on Normandy, the weather cleared, and they were able to successfully land on the beach. So maybe the weather was something that God did through divine intervention to bring success to that operation. That's an example of providence. I'm sure you can think of others. But now, the miracles themselves, these are the things we've been talking about. The miracles are a divine act. You can't pull them off. I can't pull them off. This is God's signet ring. This is God saying, I'm here, and I am validating what my messenger is saying. The power, it's supernatural. It's beyond us. It's outside of the natural state of things. It's outside of the universe. It's beyond time, space, material. Supernatural. The trait is that it gives glory to God. It validates his messenger. It's basically saying, I am God. I can do things you can't. Listen up. Listen to this guy. An example, raising the dead. There's not many people who have said that they have the power to raise the dead. Only God can raise the dead, and he did that with Jesus. So that's an example of unusual events, categories of unusual events. And what we're talking about now is miracles. These are the miracles that are basically validating the messenger, his prophets, his spokespersons, and validating the messages. So let's summarize what miracles are. All right. So miracles basically say, does God exist? Yeah, he exists. How do we know that? He created the greatest miracle of all times, the creation of the universe. So yes, he exists, as validated by the miracles. The fact that we're sitting here listening to this video is miraculous. The fact that we are is miraculous. Is he a theist or a deist? Remember, a theist says God, after creating the universe, hangs in there, sticks with him, continues to support the universe and everything in it. A deist says, no, I created it, turn and walk away, you're on your own. Well, is he a theist or a deist? He is a theist. He wants to interact with us. He wants to be part of our lives. He wants to talk to us. He wants to communicate with us. He wants us to understand some things. Communication? Yeah. A theist wants to communicate with his creation. Who's doing the creation? Who's doing the communication? Well, he's doing it himself. In the early days in the garden with Adam and Eve, he communicated directly with himself. And then in the patriarchal age, he communicated through his patriarchs. Each of the family heads, he would give them messages, give them dreams, and thus communicate with them and explain to them what he would like them to do. Later on, he communicated through the prophets. And these prophets would give messages to the people, try to get them to change their ways. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. He communicated through his son, through Jesus, who literally came to earth and lived with us and gave us lots and lots of messages. and lots of signs, and he was validated time and time again with miracles and signs. And then finally, the Bible. The Bible is his written communication. The Bible is a miracle. To be able to have a book being written by many, many authors over thousands of years that basically tells a single message from front to back, over 66 books that is completely consistent, is miraculous. And the fact that that book was given to us thousands of years ago has been communicated to us today, and the message in the Bibles that we have today essentially match up with that he was originally told to the authors and written by those authors. So he communicates with us. All right. So the messages were validated by miracles. The messages were validated by signs. The Bible today is basically our miracle. And to continue this series of apologetic classes, I'm going to suggest that you go look at my class From Then Until Now. So we've said that God exists. We say that miracles prove that God wants to talk to us. What did he tell us? Well, he told us the Bible. So if you go out to my YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/@wrathcamp_apologetics. Go out to that channel. Under the class section, there's a class called From Then Until Now, and it looks at the New Testament and shows how that which is confirmed by miracles is a book that we can still read, understand, and believe today. Okay?